Yes, recording has begun.
Wonderful. Meredith, take it away. Um, she has been amazing. She works, and I'm going to mispronounce the high school that you work on, so I'm going to have you work in. So I'm going to have you explain that. But she works in a high school on the East Coast, and has done wonderful work overseas with World Soup Kitchen. So that's it. And also, I think she's visited many, many countries that I haven't even stepped foot in. So go for it.
All right. Well, nice to meet you all. My name's Meredith Hedrick, and I'm in Annandale, Virginia, which is outside of Washington, D.C. The school system I work for is Fairfax County Public Schools. It's one of the largest school systems in the United States. It's like equivalent, I think LA County Schools is bigger than ours, but Fairfax is really large. It's the fourth largest employer in the state of Virginia. And I work at, it's called a jumbo ESOL school, English for Speakers of Other Languages. So 80% of the student population, English is not their first language. So I've been there over 20 years, and I'll tell you my journey of getting there. And I've have gone through different thought processes of, do I want to try to do something else, or do I want to stay? But you're going to hear about me today, and you're going to hopefully understand why I came to the decision that I have been the best job for me right now, and there's just no other place that I'd rather be. So at the school, I'm a coordinator between the students, administration, and the community. So I'm an instructional coach for teachers, but I also help with the programmatic support, really focusing on equity issues and making sure that the students have their basic needs, because when basic needs are met, then you can get to the learning. So it's a really dynamic role. I get to work with students, I get to work with adults and community members, and it's hard to make it all work and everyone happy at the same time, but it's provided me so many cool, unique opportunities and personal development, and the kids just feed my energy every day. So to back up, I'm from the Detroit area in Michigan. And so I grew up in Michigan. My mom is a teacher, and my dad worked for Ford Motor Company. And they always had me volunteering. It was always a part of our life. My mom also worked at a high needs school, low socioeconomic status, and she was a home ec teacher. So she taught cooking and sewing. And my godmother was in charge of the youth program at a temple called Workman's Circle. And Workman's Circle really believes that everyone's equal and contributes to the ceremony. But I think it's those values that really influenced me. You can see at the slide, I went to Michigan State University, and I studied international relations. Unfortunately, 2 days ago, it says Spartan Strong because it's the anniversary of the shooting at Michigan State. But what Michigan State is really known for is really down to earth people with really good work ethic. And it's one of the top recruiters for the Peace Corps. And so I studied international relations there, and I just had a great experience. And I did study overseas in Brussels. It's my husband, we both went to Michigan State, and we both studied abroad. And I could tell you that story. That's a whole nother story, but we've been together basically ever since. And then we came back and we started working in Washington, D.C. in our fields of international relations, and decided that we wanted to go overseas. We were debating between the JET program, teaching English in Japan, or the Peace Corps, but the more people we talked to, the more that we felt Peace Corps was a better fit for us. And we weren't married at the time. We were just dating. And, at that age, you don't know what's what. But he went first, and he served in Senegal. And I left 3 to 6 months later. And I went to Turkmenistan, which is in Central Asia. I brought artifacts along. And this is one of my artifacts from Central Asia. So I was there in 1996. So that's 4 years after independence for the Soviet Union. And it's a really interesting time because of Soviet bloc countries, and it's a culturally, the Turkmen are Muslim, but then you had the Soviet influence, so religion wasn't allowed, and it was a nomadic culture. And I loved it. I was an English teacher. It was, yeah, I can't even say it's one of the poorest countries in the world. There's no sense of democracy, but the people are so nice and they have such a welcoming culture. So most of the houses have hand woven rugs. A lot of the rugs are from Turkmenistan, and there's 5 tribes. So this represents one of the tribes. And then the black and white represents warding off the evil eye.
We can't see, Meredith, we can't see your item. Oh, there you go. Okay.
That good?
Thank you.
Yes. Yeah. So people would hang this near cribs or above doors or anywhere where you wanted to keep safe and secure. So when you're in Peace Corps, you have 3 months of training and then you serve for 2 years. And I was an English teacher. But one of my lessons from Peace Corps is your biggest passion is going to be your projects. And I think you all volunteer in addition on top of your job. So I think we all understand the idea that you have your job and it's rewarding and it's fulfilling, but it's really nice to have a project that you work on. I did an English camp. I did women's small business. And I think one of the really most memorable small projects was Rotary International donated glasses. And glasses were very hard to come by. This is 4 years after the Soviet Union fell and Turkmenistan was establishing independence. And I actually unintentionally caused, I wouldn't say it was a riot because people weren't fighting, but people really wanted the glasses. And so Rotary International sends the glasses, and then you just leave out needle and thread and books, and then people just figure out which ones were best for them. So that was a really memorable project because it really taught me how much their basic needs are for, things like that. So thinking about that, I don't know if have you all in your group talked about the UN Sustainable Development Goals?
It might be good to go over those just to have for those who have gone over them, be a refresher, but also in terms of context of what you do.
Okay, so the UN has all these sustainable development goals. Some are related to climate, which you guys do. Some are related to education and healthcare. I think there's 24. But the last one is related to partnership for goals. And the idea is that through partnerships, you can serve all the goals. So for example, maybe I think someone mass care. So maybe you're in healthcare, providing equitable healthcare for people, or you're modifying the hours so people can be served. For climate change, for example, I volunteer with Chesapeake Bay Foundation on oyster restoration because the oysters clean the water. And the idea is that you can't do things by yourself. So you really need the partnership and both people benefit. So here in the United States, Rotary International collects the glasses, but they also need people to distribute it and have a way to distribute on the local economy. So I'm just going to here and there mention some of the UN Sustainable Development Goals. And along with the partnerships, I think a theme that I carry throughout is I realized about myself, I'm a people person. And I didn't know if I knew it was a skill until later in life, but I'm going to show you another artifact. So I lived in Central Asia and 17. Okay, thank you. I lived in Central Asia. So that's Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, and some people consider it Tajikistan. It's near the Caspian Sea. If you look up, oh gosh, Mia, if you can find it, they're in Uzbekistan. They were rebuilding a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and they were redoing all the mosaics. And I believe it's in Bukhara, if you look it up. And it's this beautiful old mosque. And we went there on vacation, as with some other Peace Corps volunteers, just to see the mosque. And I was looking at the scaffolding and when I say technology, the technology that they were using, but the technology was very primitive. And so they were taking the ceramic pieces down and hand sawing or carving each piece. But this one had broke and fallen to the floor. And I was like, can I take this home as a souvenir? And they're like, sure, we're going to throw it away anyways. But I thought about it, like first they had to make the clay, then they had to bake it in the sun. Then they had to paint it, which takes a really long time, and dry it out. And then they were sanding the edges so it would be in the correct shape to replace that exact piece that was originally there. I mean, there's no computer generated things. For example, in Germany, the clock tower fell, but they used computers and technology to redo that. And that took a long time. So my dad, when I went to Peace Corps volunteer, and being a Michigander, and Michiganders do like to talk, they gave me a lot of things to take and hand out, including these little lapel pins that were little sailors. And so I don't know, I was kind of taken back by this process and thinking how long this is going to take. So I gave everyone these little presents that were pins. And then they said, oh, would you like to have tea? And I said, sure. And it was just a beautiful day. And in the end, they wanted me to have one that they had recently finished. So they gave me one that they were about to put up and hang on this mosque. And I thought, like, no, I can't take this because this took so long to make. But so this is one of actually my most treasured possessions because it really represents the hard work and the heart and soul of people, but also the human connection that you make by just talking with people and being with people. And that these people spent so much time to create this, and they were literally about to put it up and into this mosque, which would be there for eternity, but they were nice enough to give it to me. So another takeaway is partnerships and just your relationships that you build with people. So that's my Peace Corps phase. Are there any questions?
What a beautiful mosque.
Yeah, look it up. It's really cool. I haven't looked it up in a little bit of time.
There's a picture of it right in the chat.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Okay. Yeah, it was really incredible. Oh, yeah, Bukhara Mosque. That's it. And it's a UNESCO World Heritage Site. It's just so cool. Okay, so speaking of Peace Corps and transitioning, this slide is the one that inspired me to go to Poland. So as I said, I was a return Peace Corps volunteer. I moved back to Northern Virginia, and we volunteer here and there. I have 2 boys, one's in middle school and one's in high school, and we all go through different phases of life of when we're more available to do certain things. And since I've been raising my boys and being a teacher and I'm really involved in my local community, which is where I met the Barlows. I don't think she's here, but she's the one that connected me. I hadn't been doing my international volunteerism. So I feel like I was being fulfilled, but I really and we were traveling, and we had some big trips planned because the kids were getting older. We were going to go to Costa Rica, and then COVID hits. And I was like, oh, I missed a little bit. I will be honest, for me, the sense of adventure, right? Just going somewhere, meeting all these new people and being on the road, and just the wanderlust. So I saw the picture of these 2 ladies, and it reminded me of my really good friend in Peace Corps, Colleen, who lives in Minnesota. One of you said you're from Minnesota. And I just was looking at this picture, and, just when Ukraine started, it was just so upsetting. And I was going back to my Peace Corps days thinking, well, I speak Russian, and while Ukraine, the main language is Ukrainian, a lot of people do speak Russian, and the area that was hit was the Russian speaking population. So 1, I have the skill. 2, I have the passion. My ethnic background is from that area, and I traveled a lot in Eastern Europe, so I physically know how to get around and navigate. And it just kept eating at me. I want to go volunteer. I want to go volunteer. Is it safe? Is it not safe? Can we afford this? Because it would be out of my own pocket. Can I leave my boys? And I don't know. So this picture pops up of the 2 ladies on the right. And I talk with my friend Colleen, and she's like, let's do it. Let's go. We're going to volunteer with World Central Kitchen, and we're going to make this work. Well, as we all know, when you make plans with friends, it doesn't always work out. And when one person's available, the other one might not be. But I was still ready to go. My family supported me. My school supported me. And to get it was 2 weeks off basically from a public school during testing season is really hard. But I've been at my school for over 20 years, and it's a newer principal, but he knows me through different projects that I've done, which I'll show you in a minute. And I was mentally prepared to just say, I'm going. Like, I hope you give me permission, but I'm going. And he said, this is you. I know this is you. This is your beat. So I give you my blessing and you can go to Poland for 2 weeks, which was really great. The next slide that I want to show you that I want to talk about when volunteering. Oh, I think I took it out actually, because I was trying to cut it down. I wanted to focus on trusting your instinct because I was nervous to go. I did do my research. I talked to one gentleman who had a viral Facebook post and I got a hold of him and was able to talk to him. I researched the town, the distance to Ukraine and Lviv and just the different areas that were getting hit and exit strategy actually if something were to happen. And all of my instincts were telling me that I was going to be okay. It ended up a friend did go with me, which was also another safety net, but I want to just emphasize when you do volunteer, trust your instinct and do all your research to make sure that it feels safe for you. Everyone has a different feeling of safety. So World Central Kitchen, which I'm realizing that you might not all know what World Central Kitchen is. So World Central Kitchen, Jose Andres, he's nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize this year. He is a chef. He's a very famous chef. He's originally from Spain and he's on the Today Show a lot. He's opened up a lot of restaurants, first here in DC, but now they're in Miami and they're in New York. And DC Central Kitchen was a food bank that took food from restaurants or farmers or different areas and then created healthy meals for the homeless. And it really is an effort to restore dignity for homeless people. So the thing with DC Central Kitchen and later World Central Kitchen is that they are healthy meals that we would want to eat themselves and they're nourishing because a lot of times food for people in need tends to be ramen or carbohydrates or highly processed food. So what Jose Andres is all about is, feeding how we would want to be fed and food with dignity. And so that's his picture. And then he has great partnerships. Is it Mark Burnett? I don't know if you all can see the picture on the right. And he's on all those cooking shows. So because Jose Andres is so dynamic, he gets a lot of people to volunteer. And so Rachel Ray was there when I was there. This is Mark Burnett. And there's a whole, they call it hashtag Chefs for Ukraine. And he just attracts a lot of people. So World Central Kitchen goes to different places in need. It could be an environmental disaster, hurricanes, tornadoes, landslides, earthquakes, or it could be in times of war. So they're actually, I don't exactly know if they're in Egypt or Gaza right now, but they are serving people right now and they are non-political. So they just provide food to people who need it. So that's a little summary of World Central Kitchen. Did anyone want to add anything else that they know about World Central Kitchen? So what these
Well,
two,
excuse me, what I was going to say, Meredith, is in most of the places they use local produce when they can. So they help the local people to have some kind of cottage industry while they're in a conflict or in a disaster.
Yes, and I'm glad that you said that. And I wanted to make one note before I go on this slide. So when you go volunteer for World Central Kitchen, on the left, you can either be a kitchen volunteer or on the right, you can be a distribution volunteer. I was a distribution volunteer. I wanted to be in distribution. My husband went after I came home because of our kids and he worked in the kitchen, but then we understood after I went, he would do the kitchen at day and then distribution at night. But correct. So if you look at the apples in this picture, I don't know if you guys remember, there were all these embargoes and the sea was blocked by the Russians, so the grain couldn't get out. Well, Moldova had all these apples. It was apple season. And I don't even know how many apples they had, but basically it was going to destroy their whole economy if the apples were going to go to waste. But Jose Andres worked it out so that he bought all the apples in Moldova and got it over to Poland and into Ukraine. So then it helped Moldova with their apple industry and the farmers. And then we got the apples in Poland. So yeah, if you just look at the visual and the colors of this food, it is just incredible. It is really amazing. The quality and the quantity of what they serve, 3 meals a day and snacks in between. So this is the kitchen. They rent a warehouse. This was my job. I did distribution. It was called Tesco. If you've traveled, Tesco is kind of like our Target maybe, or our Walmart. So what they basically did is they took an old Tesco and they made it into a humanitarian village. And I'm going to show you a couple things here because I think it's a good reminder that you need to use your skills when you go volunteer based on whatever that is. So I like chit-chatting and I like to be outside. So I chose to be outside of Tesco, and there was another area inside where they had baby food and baby formula. I liked being outside because I'm going to show you everything that was going on outside. And I worked alongside Polish and Ukrainians. And so the shifts were 7 a.m. until 9 or 10 p.m. and you did breakfast, lunch, dinner, snacks in between, and restocking. So it was very physical, and you had to commit to 7 days nonstop. So that was the commitment when you were there. And it was harder than what I thought, I will admit, just emotionally and physically. So that was our distribution line. And what I thought was really cool. So the woman behind me is where I'm serving the tea. Excuse me, we're still in touch and her husband is still fighting. So I was there the first spring of the conflict and her husband is still fighting. She is a teacher, so she had come to Poland with her son, and then she was a paid staff member from World Central Kitchen, but eventually she ended up going back and she sees her husband when he's on leave, but it just wasn't sustainable for her to live in Poland for her or her son. So she ended up going back. And then in the picture, there were some Polish and Ukrainian counterparts there. So that was our lunch. So you can see a starch, 2 vegetables, and a meat. The next slide is outside Tesco. What I thought was really cool, and maybe you all are more familiar as Red Cross volunteers, is the Italians, they decided we will be in charge of the showers. And so it was the Italian firemen, and they were on 2-week rotations. So they were in charge of the bottom left of the showers and the water situation. And it is more complicated because you have to make sure at any given time, if there's 1,000 people there, that you have enough water and pressure for all those people, and drainage issues and privacy and cleanliness and all of that. At the top right was the circus tent, and the Germans hosted the circus tent for the kids, which was really cool because they had something to do outside and they had some sense of normalcy. And then that was also a rotation where different performers would drive from Germany. And then there was pop-up volunteers, which is kind of good and bad, but this was a driver because we were, let's just say, 20 kilometers from the border. So if people came across the border by train or foot or by car, then they could stay at Tesco for as long as they needed. And then if they had to get to the Polish train station, this was a form of transportation. This is inside Tesco. So what was really interesting is on the left, you can see the different countries had pop-up offices for help on getting to the country. So every country had a little bit of a different package. Ireland had the best package as far as transportation, supports once you were in the country, housing, and the ability to work. So that's what the flags are. And the hallway with the pictures, that was the mother and child room. It, you know, when you're in a refugee camp with thousands of people and you can see the room on the right, things do pop up. And so the women and child room was a more protective area, and if people had trauma, so that was a more private room. And then if you see the pallet chairs, that was built by the U.S. Army. So the U.S. Army came in and they sent people every now and then to just fix things and update things. And then you see all the cots on the right. That was really hard. So what you can't see in this picture is the senior citizen area. So men under 60 were not supposed to cross into Poland because they were supposed to remain to fight. But there were some disabled and mental health, people with mental health issues. And so there was one section in that room for that, but this was the beds, and every day it would have to be, everyone would have to leave. They would have to sanitize, redo the beds, and then people can come back at night, but the lights never went off. So it was very hard for people to sleep. But if you think about, like, where would you best be suited as a volunteer? Like, would you want to do food? Would you be better off at one of the desks explaining the policy and the regulations of immigration, or in the mother and child room? So there's just so much to do when you volunteer. This was really cool. So this was right across from where I was, and they needed hot water for the pet food. And so the animal rescue tent was right across from us, because the people left with their animals and they had different issues. The animals pop up as well, health issues. Those are kittens. So someone had a pregnant cat. There was something wrong with the paws of the dog. But it was so cool to have the animal tent, and everyone says the animals, they rescue each other. The picture on the top with the girl writing on her vest, she is about to go into Ukraine for a mission. And so they did put on bulletproof vests and put all her contact information on there. Okay, this is really cool. But before I explain this, are there any questions?
We'll have time for questions after your talk, so don't worry
Okay.
if there aren't any right now. And I have questions for you already.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I mentioned earlier that I was a Peace Corps volunteer in Turkmenistan. On this picture, you can see where Turkmenistan is. And social media, I'm not a huge fan of social media, but this is one time that it really definitely worked out. So this is Eric Keene. He was my student when I was a teacher in Turkmenistan. And I posted that I went to World Central Kitchen and volunteered in Poland, and he reached out and he said, "Why didn't you tell me? I would have come." I said, "Well, I didn't know." And he's living in Finland right now, and he's fluent in Russian, which is also really helpful. And so it turned out that he volunteered when my husband was there. And so for me, that is like so full circle, that you can volunteer as a Peace Corps volunteer and inspire one of your students to go volunteer. And the fact that he volunteered with my husband, they spent 10 days together, 12 hours a day working. And for me, that's just so special. And I still have the letters that when I was a volunteer and came back, all my students, we would communicate back and forth through handwritten letters. And I still have his letters. He was one of those students that are just so special, sincere, and thoughtful. And so, yeah, so that's my present to me is that, you never know when you're volunteering the influence you have on different people. I just wanted to show you, this is my World Central Kitchen. I think like Red Cross is really into branding. And so when you volunteer, you have got to be wearing World Central Kitchen uniform and badges, and all their food is marked because they really have high standards. And I really appreciated that about them. Let's see, I'm going to go to the next slide. So it was only 10 days in World Central Kitchen, but my takeaway was I felt so inspired and young, actually, despite the fact that it was really hard to be in a humanitarian refugee camp and to see and hear stories and work with the Ukrainians and hear about where their husbands were or how they were evacuated, or seeing the buses. The one thing I didn't mention, when you're outside, the buses from the border come up. And on a Sunday, for example, we had a bus an hour. So 50 people an hour, and sometimes 2-3 buses. And people would come off and they had not had food for 24 to 48 hours. And they would talk about driving past the Russians because they had come from Eastern Ukraine all the way through. So that was very, very hard. The physical labor of like moving the water, the food, the lifting, the moving, was really hard. But despite that, it was so fulfilling. So I would do it again in a heartbeat. But again, I want to trust my instinct. And the missions that have come up, they just haven't been the right one for me. So what I wanted to mention about is like, whether you're a Red Cross volunteer or I did World Central Kitchen, I have 3 takeaways for you guys. Number 1 is always surround yourself with good people, whether it was Peace Corps or World Central Kitchen, or this is work that I'm doing now. I always surround myself with good people. I mentioned trust your instinct. And the third one is that we have to adjust for different phases in life. And it seems like we're a multi-generational group that's here. And right now at my phase in life, I do want to be home with my kids. I'm working full time as a teacher, educator. and my kids are in high school, and I'm actually looking at them being out of the house 4 or 5 years from now. So I want to spend as much time with them as I can. So I found ways to volunteer in my local community that are equally fulfilling. Like I mentioned, I'm at Annandale High School, and we have a big refugee population. And so these are some pictures from when the Afghans came at the fall of Afghanistan. And we had a peer helper program, and you just find your people, students or teachers. And we did amazing things, and supplies were sent to us, and the students stepped up and they became the leaders. They wrote trainings for other teachers, cultural adaptation workshops for kids. The picture at the bottom left is the Embassy of Belgium. They invited us to come meet the ambassador, and we celebrated International Day of the Girl. It's since become an annual event. So I've gone twice with different groups of girls. And the picture of the girls at the top right, the girl on the left in the blue and like the eggplant, she's graduated and is at university. Then that's another educator. And then Asanullah is a student. He graduated last year, and he's at community college. Then the two other girls, they're graduating this year, and they've gotten scholarships. I took them on the college tour to GW in Georgetown, and we're navigating, are they going to stay at home? Are they going to go away? And what program are they going to best fit in? And then the pictures on the left, I am the teacher sponsor for the Center for International Education and Exchange, and so advocating for study abroad. And because I think of all the networks in our school and just the special environment, we got over $80,000 of scholarship money for our students to study abroad last year. And these are first generation students. They got 90% scholarship money. Most of them have never even been on a plane before. It was their first time getting passports. So the girl in at the bottom in the yellow, her name is Mei Lee, and she was a freshman last year, and it was a little young for her to go, and she had never been on a plane, and she decided to do the unchaperoned flight because it saves money. And then I was going to go, I was able to go observe a program, but I was late to go see her because my plane got delayed in Iceland. But anyways, I went up to go see her, and I said, Mei Lee, how are you doing? And it was during class, and she said, Miss Hedrick, I am better than okay. I am great. And they've just become these amazing leaders. But ironically, the student at the table is another former student from Annandale High School, and he started international travel with the choir at Annandale High School. He's a teacher out in California, and our students were sitting next to each other when we went to the classroom. And I also did a teacher workshop in Costa Rica with the organization. So I also, as a policy, say yes to almost everything because there's just so many unexpected surprises, and it leads to more opportunities. So that's me in a nutshell. I have a couple more artifacts, but I think it's a good time to ask for questions.
I have one for you.
Sure.
You talked about 7 days in a row working, and you were there for about 3 weeks.
Uh-huh.
How did you take care of yourself while you were there, and how did you take care of yourself when you got home? Because I can imagine the stories and the auditory and the visual things that you saw and heard while you were there. How did you take care of yourself while you were there, and then how did you take care of yourself when you were back home? What kinds of things did you do?
Yeah, so I have never had blood pressure issues, and I had never had swelling. And I will be honest, I went to the med tent one day. I have never had a problem in my life, and I'm on my feet with teaching. And I did have to go to the medical tent and elevate, and then they gave me compression socks. So that, I mean, the physical part, that was very new to me. I didn't expect that to happen. And then emotionally, I feel very fortunate that I had done things like this. And I had heard so many stories in my job, but I did cry while I was there. The ladies I worked with, this is another artifact. One of the ladies gave us this as I was leaving, and it was just so hard to know that I'm leaving and going home to my house, but they're still in this situation. But we hugged, and I don't know, it was just really, I did cry while I was there with the people that I got to know at the end, including the Polish and the Ukrainian woman. And then I came back and I was okay. But my friend who went with me, who had never done anything like this, she took weeks to kind of get herself together. It really bothered her. And there was some evidence of sex trafficking at Tesco. We were trained on what to look out for, and there were police. There was so many layers of police there, but that it really, really, really bothered her. Of course, it's atrocious, but that is what she came home with, thinking like, how can we stop this, and how could people take such advantage of a desperate situation? So yeah, I physically had to take care of myself, stay hydrated. I took rehydration salts. I went home, and then another thing that I've noticed is, I mean, no judgment of people that drink, but you really have to be careful, because between there and some other situations I've been, it just dehydrates you. And so really coming home, staying hydrated, but also there was a central bar where people would go to for happy hour. And that was really nice to connect with different people.
Wonderful. One of the things that you mentioned is that buddy system of having other people you can cry with at the end of the day. And the other thing you mentioned is the drinking, because people quite often, because of the stress of what they listen to and the stories they listen to, they self-medicate with drugs or alcohol. It's a way of coping with the kind of emotions that run gamut when you are exposed to something you're not used to, like you're a normal human being responding to a totally abnormal event. And I was just curious what your self-care methodology was. And I also think you bring up a really, really good point, which is if you don't take care of yourself physically, you end up having symptoms that you do not want. 7 days a week, 10 to 12 hours a day is a lot of time. And we in Red Cross have similar hours. We do 12 hours for 3 weeks or something a day, but we get a day off. And I think it's just really important when you're assessing whether you're going to go, what age you are. If you haven't been on and you mentioned that with your friend, if you haven't been exposed to it and you're younger, you haven't built up the defense mechanisms that you need to be able to cope with it. And you bring up some really good points. I just I want to validate what you say, Meredith, because
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. And I would love to open it up to questions, because this is a very informal group and discussion. I'm just amazed at the slides. I forbade Meredith to have more than 6 slides. I am so much a stickler. I said photographs are great, and she did. She followed my rule, because I think we're sometimes slid to death, and so this was really joyful to see the people that you interacted with. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Yeah. Anybody else, please? Kay, you had a question?
Yeah. What is the picture? Where is the picture with the dog in it?
Yeah, so that is, so when you have these humanitarian rescue camps, it's at that Tesco place. So let me show you the front. Yeah, okay. So if you see this, where all the people are standing, and by the way, the people performing, it was every day at 3 o'clock, a Korean church would bring out a piano and perform, and everyone would dance. Literally where I'm standing is the animal tent. And so, and I think that was either Norway or Denmark sponsored it and sent veterinarians there.
Not this one, the next picture where there's a dog in the background and there are people in front of this white building. That one.
Oh, okay. That's the ambassador of Belgium. That's his residence. And I don't remember the name of his dog, but in Washington, D.C., that's the residence of the ambassador of Belgium.
Okay. And who are the people that are in that picture?
Yeah, so on the right is, I don't remember the title of the person who manages the embassy in the house. It's very Downton Abbey, but she's in charge of the history and making sure everything is done to, not to code, what would the proper word be? Properly. So the lady on the right maintains the house and the embassy and the diplomatic visits. Then the girl to her left with a floral skirt, she's my student Sosan. She was in 10th grade there, and now she's in 12th grade. The guy in the middle is the ambassador, and he's still here in Washington, D.C. And then the girl to his left is my other student, Rahaf, and she is also a senior. and then it's myself, and then Ellen, who's the special assistant to the ambassador, and she's in my community, and she's the one who connected our school with the embassy to celebrate the UN holiday of the International Day of the Girl.
Okay. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Anybody else have questions? Joe had a comment in the chat. She said, in American Red Cross, there's always a mental health resource available. Red Crossers, please take advantage of the service during and after deployment. What is the process to avail of this? In every chapter, this is an information for Akash. In every single chapter, there's a disaster mental health team. Just like there's an echo. Could somebody turn off their phones or their computer, turn off the sound? Anyway, in every single chapter, there is a disaster team. Part of that disaster team are mass care and logistics, but they always have a disaster mental health worker or a disaster health services worker. If you get deployed and you come back from a deployment, there will be a mental health person who will make a welcome home call. If you need to speak to a mental health worker, you check with your disaster services director in your local chapter, or you can check with your CEO and say, I just want a list of all the people in disaster, and you can phone that person up and say, hey, I need to talk to you. Or if you're out of disaster, mental health will always be identified.
Right. If you're at a disaster, there's always mental health available at the disaster as well for both staff and clients.
And the thing is, which most people don't know about, in a big, big shelter where 200 or 300 people are, usually they identify themselves with ribbons rather than having a label that says they're mental health PhD or MA. They put a ribbon or some kind of coloring on their clothing so that people can identify them. And you can tell a client, just go over and talk to the lady with a green ribbon on her arm. Or you can also tell a staff person, hey, go take a break with that lady or that man, there's always options. Okay.
I saw the other question was how to volunteer for World Central Kitchen. Can you see my screen where it says volunteer with us? Let's see.
No.
I'll put the link in. How's that?
Wonderful.
So what you basically do is you sign up and you, so for example, I sign up and every now and then I'll look, or so, when everything happened in Gaza, I went on to see where they're at. What they used to have that I'm interested in doing in Puerto Rico, so they have their own farms in Puerto Rico, because you also have to have a sustainable pipeline of where you're going to get the food from. And it's a project with local universities, if I'm remembering this correctly. So I did want to go to Puerto Rico and do the farming, but it hasn't happened yet. But it's on my list. And also, I think the woman from Washington State, but for example, in Michigan, I can't remember what happened, but there was a natural disaster. They will partner with local restaurants and create distribution sites. So if you're in an area where something happens, you can look them up. Let's see. Are we all connect? Yeah, okay, there we go. Trying to think if there was anything else I want to share. So yeah, so I just checked the World Central Kitchen website. I think I'm going to look into Red Cross. The other one that I wanted to do, when there's disasters here in Northern Virginia, whenever there's a disaster, we have I can't remember the exact name of the response team, but they send the teams from Fairfax County. But the training is very intense, and I'm realizing that they prefer former military. So I started the research process. So I think that that's not going to work out for me, but I'm going to look into the Red Cross. I I definitely did learn when I was there about what organizations, you know, like every organization is as successful as their leader, and some did go through mistakes. I can't remember what organization. They brought tons of donations. They didn't create a line or a lottery, not a lottery, but like a ticket system to go get any things. And it was just a madhouse. They just like threw it on the table and it was disorganized. And so I like volunteering when it's, you know, when it's going to be organized and orderly and there's going to be standards. And if you all have ideas and suggestions for me to volunteer, I'm all ears.
Well, you brought up a really good point, Meredith, that when you go to volunteer, the whole point is to hopefully know the language, or at least be familiar with having lived in a country where you had to learn the language, or so you don't have to go through culture shock in order to help someone. Because the whole position of you being there is to take care of other people, not for other people to have to take care of you.
Right, exactly.
Others, any questions that you want to put in the chat or that you want to raise your hand? It's so wonderful to have Meredith here as a resource, and this is your time to ask anything about World Food Kitchen or Peace Corps or any of that, any of her experience or working in other volunteer organizations.
One thing I'll just say, being a public school teacher in a community which has lots of refugees and displaced people, is don't forget you can do international work locally. Everyone needs help reading, like just sitting and reading with people, practicing their English. A big thing now in our Afghan community is driving hours for the women. And so I took some of the women to their drivers at school. And there's just so many different things, job readiness. And so every little thing helps.
Mm.
A lot of libraries have reading programs for those that need help with reading and learning the language. I know our locals do.
Absolutely. And also, there are in every big city, there's what we call resettlement agencies, who are the agencies contracted with the US government to support refugees, help them learn how to use the bus system, help them register their children for school, help them with food, help them learn how to shop in a grocery store that they are so unfamiliar with, help them know how to open up a bank account. These are resettlement agencies like International Rescue Committee, Catholic Charities, Lutheran Immigration Fund, Jewish Immigration Forum. There are all sorts of both religious and non-religious resettlement agencies that are contracted out by the US government to provide services. So you can volunteer for one of those. And then I wanted to also open it up to any of you who work as a volunteer working with international people. Where do you work other than Red Cross? And any input that you wanted to give to Meredith or to share about your experience. This is your opportunity to do that.
Hi, can you hear me?
Hi, Adriana. Hello.
Sorry. Yeah, well, I think it's very interesting, and you talk about everything. You know, sometimes it's internationally that you can volunteer, but there are many agencies or organizations in your own country that you can help. In my case, I was in Colombia, and it was armed conflict and disasters, all about you don't need to go, even think about go to another country, even if they take people when Haiti or Katrina, they always, we work with all national societies. But yeah, it's important that recognize that work and everything. Yeah, I think that I want to say thank you for your work, and yeah, I feel very identified with all that stuff. Yeah, it's beautiful. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Especially when you're bilingual in Spanish and English in the United States, it's really important.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I work in that part too. Yeah, with ESOL students and all the stuff. Yeah, but yeah, that background with Red Cross and all the stuff, all opportunities, working on all that kind of thing. I saw the shelters. We work like that, and we work with other organizations, and other national societies, Red Cross national societies, and other part of the movement like ICRC Federation. So, and yes, we learned a lot, because at the beginning, it's like you say, it was so mad, everything crazy, but then we start learning about Red Cross. Always learn after something happened, then they
Mhm.
fix mistakes that happen with Red Cross. But for
Yeah.
all that year that I've been there, that's what I learned. We always learn after something happened about the mental issues, the wellness, and the people, and the volunteers, and the he called clients. So all that stuff before, years ago, that even exists. Nobody even think, but after many situations that change, that create yeah, this kind of help. Okay. So, but anyway, thank you. I see, yeah, I see many things related. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no, thank you. And I
Thank you,
think that's
Adriana.
why the more we talk and communicate with other people and learn from each other, it's really important.
Yeah, I would say working as a licensed clinical social worker in an intensive care nursery, almost my entire population was Spanish speaking, and most of them had never been inside a hospital before, let alone in a high tech area like an intensive care nursery. So it takes a lot of orientation to be able to cope with that kind of situation. It's almost like being in a war zone, because the stress is so intense, and
Mhm.
trying to deal with having to work, having to take care of other children, wanting to be full-time at the hospital with your very sick or very premature baby, um, and trying to help families know where to turn, where to get resources. So in the United States, there are plenty of opportunities to do that kind of assistance in terms of providing resources, connecting them to what they need to survive and to make it through a stressful situation.
I agree, Kate, and especially the paperwork. So I had knee surgery this year because I tore my ACL, and between the insurance, the billing, the appointments, um, it really highlighted, if you were not a native English speaker and familiar with how we process paperwork and documents and online and uploading, and there's things that you can't do on your phone. You need a computer versus a phone. So just to have one person walk you through that process is really helpful.
Yeah, I mean, and especially when most of the staff doesn't speak Spanish or your language, it's like you become the key person for them. That's who they turn to, no matter what the docs say. They come to you to say, is this correct? Are they telling me the truth?
Yeah.
Okay, dear ones, do you have any other questions that you'd like to ask Meredith? Or Meredith, do you have any parting words that you want to give to the people that are on the call?
No, I just say follow your heart, do what you want to do. And I agree with you, Kay, what you were saying about the language. I do tell some of the younger people at our school because they feel like they have to be fluent in Spanish in order to be successful. And I said, no, you can speak with your heart. Like you know, we have our heart language. So, you know, there's people who are bilingual. And I would just say, if you are not bilingual, don't let that stop you from pursuing your goals. You just learn how to work around it. But Kay, I absolutely agree, in healthcare and education, they need that native speaker. But I also tell the young people, like, you're not going to learn Spanish overnight, and they also need you to speak English with them. But no, if you have any links that you all recommend for me, I'm always open for other opportunities of things to do and places to go and volunteer work to serve. So I'm happy to hear, and thank you guys for being here and listening to my story.
Yeah, and what I'd love to say is, Meredith, if you come up with some additional resources or links that you think would be important for the people on this call to have, what we're going to do is next week, for the people who couldn't be on the call because they had conflicting meetings, we're going to send out this recording. But along with the recording, we will send out any resources that you send us about anything that you think is important or want to share a resource that somebody might be interested in. So you have time to email me, and then we'll put it in a follow-up email next week.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. You really did follow your passion, and you ended up doing everything you want to do in life, which is exactly what I often tell people: follow your passion and you'll be happier than you ever were. You know?
Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly.
And I just want to thank all of you for attending today and finding out more about Kay's work. And I think there are a couple more notes in the chat. I'm going to try and see what, oh, it's just thank you, thank you, thank you. People are thanking you, Meredith, for talking. So any last minute questions? This is your last. I'm counting down to 3. And a few hearts are being thrown at you as well. Yeah. Anything last? Okay. Oh, here's another one.
It's for me. Just look for Chefs for Ukraine Restaurant. World Central Kitchen's having their first restaurant week, where all the chefs who served in Ukraine or in Poland, they're having a fundraiser. So I'll send you that link.
Wonderful, Meredith. And I'll talk to you later, but I want to thank you so much today for being here. And all of you, thank you for being here. Have a wonderful, wonderful weekend, and a safe and warm weekend. And for those of you on the East Coast, watch out for the snow. Yeah?
Not here. We're in 50 degrees.
Oh, that's disgusting. That's wonderful. Congratulations.
Yeah.
Yeah. Take good care, everybody.
Okay.
Thanks so
It'll
much.
change.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.